The call came at 6:43 p.m. on a Tuesday in March, right as I was reviewing final contracts with our wedding planner. Mom's voice carried that particular pitch she uses when she's already made a decision, and is simply informing me of it rather than consulting. "We need to reschedule your wedding date," she said without preamble. I set down the venue paperwork. "My wedding is in 14 weeks. Everything is locked in. What are you talking about?" "Your sister's engagement party is scheduled for that same weekend. The country club only had that one Saturday available, and we've already put the deposit down. 300 guests have already been invited." I remember pressing my fingers against my temples, trying to understand if I'd heard correctly. "Mom, my wedding is the same day, June 15th. We sent save the dates 4 months ago." "Yes, and we're asking you to move it, just to a different weekend." "My name is Margaret Chen, though everyone calls me Meg. I'm a cardiac surgeon at St. Michael's Medical Center in Boston, the same hospital where I completed my fellowship. I've spent the last 6 years building a reputation in the operating room and a thriving private practice. I'm 34 years old and I've dated Derek for 7 years. We're not the kind of couple who makes rash decisions. We spent 2 years planning this wedding." "Mom, I can't move it," I said quietly. "Our families have booked hotels. My bridesmaids have already taken time off work. Derek's parents are flying in from Vancouver. The caterer, the florist, the photographer, everything is paid for and contractual." There was a pause, the kind of pause that meant she was waiting for me to volunteer a solution that would benefit my sister instead of myself. "Your sister is over the moon about this engagement. She's only going to be engaged once. The party is important to our family's social standing. Your wedding can happen any weekend. An engagement celebration is a once-in-a-lifetime moment." I sat in that silence for several seconds, the weight of those words pressing against me like a physical thing. Not once did it occur to her that my wedding was also a once-in-a-lifetime event. Not once did she suggest that perhaps Stephanie could move her engagement party. Not once did she ask what I wanted. "I'm not moving my wedding," I said. She hung up. Dad called within 20 minutes. This was the pattern in our family. Mom made the opening move, then Dad arrived as reinforcement. They operated like a prosecutorial tag team. Mom with the emotional manipulation, Dad with the logical argument dressed up as concern. "Your mother is quite upset," he began. No hello, no preamble. "This is difficult for your sister. Stephanie knew about my wedding date. We discussed it at Christmas. Plans change. The Hendersons are flying in from London for her engagement. It's a significant event for both families." The Hendersons. There it was. Stephanie was marrying into wealth, the kind of old money, multi-generational wealth that moved differently through the world than my surgeon's salary did. The Hendersons weren't just important. They represented the social elevation that my mother had spent 37 years pursuing since she married my father. "Dad, my wedding is already happening. I'm not moving it." If the Hendersons want to attend Stephanie's engagement party, they'll have to choose which family event they attend. "You're being stubborn. This family needs unity. Stephanie feels like you're trying to upstage her." I felt something crystallize in my chest at that moment, a clarity that was both clarifying and deeply isolating. Stephanie was 26 years old. She'd been engaged for 6 weeks. And somehow, in my family's hierarchy, her engagement announcement was more significant than my wedding. "Stephanie called you?" I asked. "She mentioned her concerns to your mother." Which meant Stephanie hadn't called him directly. She'd simply allowed Mom to interpret her feelings and turn them into ammunition. Over the next 5 days, I received 17 text messages from various family members. My Aunt Patricia suggested I was being unsupportive. My cousin Linda said I was creating drama. My brother Thomas sent a lengthy message about how it wouldn't kill us to be flexible for once. No one mentioned the 14 weeks of planning. No one mentioned the contracts. No one mentioned that I had moved my entire life around this date. Derek found me in our bedroom on that Thursday night, sitting on the edge of the bed with my phone dark in my lap. "They're not going to let this go, are they?" he asked. "No." Your mother called me today at the office. I looked up. What? She wanted me to convince you to move the wedding. She's escalating. She said if we don't reschedule, they might not be able to attend. That landed differently than I expected. Not because of the threat. I'd been threatened with parental absence before, but because she'd gone outside the family structure to apply pressure. She'd contacted Derek directly, which meant she saw him as leverage rather than as my partner. We're getting married on June 15th, I told him. He nodded and sat beside me. I know. But I could see the weight of it on his shoulders. My family's disapproval affected him because he cared about me, and this pressure hurt me. That was the mechanism of family coercion that I hadn't fully appreciated until that moment. They weren't just hurting me, they were strategically creating an environment where anyone who supported me would also experience their displeasure. The turning point came in early May, 7 weeks before the wedding. I was leaving St. Michael's after a 14-hour day, my feet aching in my surgical clogs, and my brain still partially focused on the post-operative recovery of a complicated LVAD patient. I had 43 text messages waiting for me. 43. Most were from my mother, sent in rapid succession, starting at 10:47 a.m. We need to talk about this like adults. Your father and I have made a decision. We cannot support a wedding that excludes your sister. We've already committed $18,000 to Stephanie's engagement party. We're prepared to redirect those funds toward your wedding if you'll reschedule. This is affecting your father's health. He's stressed about the family division. You're being deliberately hurtful. And then, in a separate thread from my aunt, your mother is in tears. This is disgusting behavior. I was sitting in my car in the parking garage, reading these messages under the weak fluorescent lights, when my phone rang. Stephanie. I heard what Mom said to Derek, she started, her voice tight. I didn't ask her to do that. Then tell her to stop. I can't control Mom, you know that. You could tell her you're uncomfortable with this whole thing. You could tell her it's not worth it. There was a long silence. I didn't want any of this, Stephanie said finally. I wanted a small engagement dinner. Mom took it and turned it into this whole production. Then untake it. Tell her you want to reschedule. I can't do that to the Hendersons. They've already planned time off. Their family is expecting it. And there it was. The moment when I understood that Stephanie wasn't driving this at all. She was being carried along by a current she'd accidentally started, and now she was too afraid to fight against it. She was also too afraid to admit that she'd allowed my mother to transform her small engagement into a weapon against me. Stephanie, I'm asking you directly. Will you ask Mom to reschedule your party? I can't. I hung up. That night, I sent a text to my father that I didn't share with anyone. I need you to understand something. Moving my wedding is not about flexibility or family unity. It's about rewarding Mom's decision to prioritize Stephanie's engagement over my marriage. If I move it, I'm teaching her that she can overturn my plans whenever something more prestigious comes along. I won't do that, not for anyone. I love you, but I won't accept this. My wedding is June 15th. You can attend or not attend, but I won't reschedule for anyone. I sent it at 1:17 a.m. I knew I shouldn't. I knew that texting family members at that hour when you're emotionally wrung out and angry was a tactical mistake. But I also knew I needed my father to understand my boundary in words that were unambiguous and undeniable. He called me at 6:52 a.m. the next morning. That text was inappropriate, he said without introduction. I was still in bed. Derek was already in the shower. Dad, I meant every word. You sent it to hurt your mother. I sent it to be honest. There's a difference. He took a sharp breath. You need to come to family dinner this Sunday. We need to settle this in person. Family dinner was my mother's monthly ritual. 20 to 30 family members gathered at my parents' home in Wellesley for a 5-course production that took weeks to plan. My mother treated it as a formal event, complete with place cards and structured conversation. These dinners were performances, not gatherings. I don't think that's a good idea, I said. It wasn't a request, Margaret. The use of my full name meant I'd crossed into genuine territory with my father. Not the territory where he was conveying my mother's position. This was his own anger. I attended the dinner on Sunday at 3 p.m., arriving early so I could have a moment before the chaos began. My mother was in the kitchen, orchestrating her staff through the preparation of her 7-course menu. She saw me and simply turned back to her work. The silent treatment. Classic. My father was in his study, reading the Sunday Globe. He gestured for me to enter and closed the door. I spoke with your mother, he said, setting the paper aside. We want you to understand that this isn't about choosing sides. It's about family responsibility. Family responsibility doesn't mean sacrificing my wedding for Stephanie's party. It's not a party, Margaret. It's a significant family event. It's a party celebrating an engagement. My wedding is celebrating a marriage. One is temporary, one is permanent. He stood and walked to his desk, where he pulled out a leather portfolio. Inside were printouts of emails and text message exchanges. My mother had been documenting my behavior. There were screenshots of my texts to my father. There were forwarded messages of conversations I'd had with other family members. My mother had been collecting evidence of my selfishness like a prosecutor building a case. Your mother believes you've been deliberately excluding Stephanie from your life, he said, showing me the compiled documentation. She says you've made negative comments about Stephanie's engagement. I hadn't. I'd made honest statements about my family's response to my wedding, but I'd never criticized Stephanie herself or her engagement. Dad, I've never said anything negative about Stephanie. I've disagreed with Mom's insistence that I move my wedding. That's not the same thing. He returned to his chair. I'm going to tell you something I've never told you before, and I'm going to tell you this because I want you to understand how serious this has become. He pulled his phone from his pocket and opened his email. 3 days ago, your mother sent me a message. She was asking if we should consider cutting your wedding costs if you refused to move it. She was asking if we should withdraw our contribution to the reception unless you became more cooperative. I felt my chest tighten. My parents had committed $28,000 toward my wedding. It wasn't a majority of the costs, but it was significant. What did you tell her? I asked. I told her absolutely not. But Margaret, I need you to understand that she's serious about this. And more importantly, I need you to understand why she's serious. He leaned forward, and I could see something in his face that I'd rarely seen before. Not anger, something underneath anger. Something that looked like sadness. Your mother has spent her entire life building a certain image of our family, a certain social position. Everything she does to maintain that position. Stephanie's engagement to the Hendersons represents a significant advancement in that social standing. I know this sounds shallow when I say it out loud. I know it is shallow, but it's the reality of your mother's internal life. So she's willing to hurt me to advance her social position? She's willing to hurt you because she doesn't see it as hurting you. She sees it as you refusing to contribute to your family's welfare. I didn't attend the dinner that continued in the main room. I left through the study door and drove to the parking lot overlooking the harbor in Waltham, where I sat in my car for 3 hours and made a decision that would have legal, financial, and emotional consequences for everyone involved. I called Derek first. I want to get married, I told him, June 15th. But if my family tries to sabotage this through financial coercion, I want to be ready. What do you mean? I mean, I want to hire a family law attorney. I want to understand my legal position if my parents try to withdraw their contribution. I want to document their behavior. I want to be prepared for them to escalate. That's intense. I know. But I also know my mother. She has never accepted a boundary without testing it first. And once she's tested it, she'll test it again in a different way. I contacted attorney Michelle Rossi that night. She specialized in family law and estate disputes, which made her qualified to understand both the interpersonal dynamics and the financial implications of what was occurring. We met at her office on May 14th at 7 p.m. after my surgical schedule concluded. Michelle was thorough in a way that was reassuring. She explained that parental contribution agreements were legally complex. If my parents had made a formal commitment to contribute funds, then withdrew those funds out of retaliation for my refusing to move my wedding, there could be legal claims. If they'd made casual promises without documentation, the legal recourse was minimal, but the emotional leverage was maximum. "Do you have any written agreements about their contribution?" she asked. I didn't, which meant they could withdraw entirely and I'd have no legal recourse, but it also meant I was vulnerable to their threats. "Here's what I recommend," Michelle said. "Document everything from this moment forward. Every conversation, every text, every email. Create a timeline of their behavior. If they do try to use financial coercion, that documentation becomes important context if this escalates further." I implemented that strategy immediately. I created a folder on my laptop titled Family Documentation. I began recording the dates, times, and content of every significant interaction. I forwarded important emails to this folder. I wrote detailed notes about phone conversations within 24 hours of them occurring. On May 21st, my mother called again. "Your father and I have decided something," she said. "We're not attending your wedding unless you reschedule it." This was the escalation I'd been expecting, not the withdrawal of financial support, a worse threat, the withdrawal of their presence. "Understood," I said. "This isn't final. We can reconsider if you change your mind." "I'm not changing my mind." "Then you're making a choice that will have consequences for your relationship with this family." She hung up. I documented that call at 11:47 a.m. on May 21st. I didn't tell Derek immediately. I needed to process it first. But 2 days later, at a dinner reservation he'd made to celebrate our 3-week countdown, he asked me directly, "Your parents aren't coming, are they?" "How did you know?" "Your mother called my office and asked my secretary if she could reach me. When my secretary offered to take a message, your mother hung up. That's not normal behavior." Derek had learned the rhythm of my family's dysfunction. He recognized the patterns. "They said they won't attend unless I move the wedding," I told him. "So they won't be attending." "That's predictable," I finished. "It's exactly what I expected. That doesn't make it okay." "No, but I've decided I'm not going to spend the next 3 weeks trying to convince them. I'm going to plan a wedding with the people who actually want to be here." We called our wedding planner the next morning. I told her that my parents wouldn't be attending and asked her to revise the family photos. That's when everything shifted, because wedding planners exist in a world of logistics and emotion, and word travels through that world. Within 48 hours, my Aunt Patricia had texted my mother something about the cancellation of my parents' attendance. My mother had apparently responded by calling family members and describing me as selfish, ungrateful, and deliberately destructive to the family unit. My cousin Linda called me on May 27th, her voice tight with the particular anxiety of someone caught between two family members. "I heard your parents aren't coming to your wedding. What happened?" I told her the basic facts. My wedding date had been locked in for months. My mother wanted me to reschedule it for my sister's engagement party. I refused. My parents responded by saying they wouldn't attend. Therefore, they weren't attending. "You could just move it," Linda suggested. "It would solve everything." "It wouldn't solve anything. It would teach my mother that she can overturn my plans whenever she has something she prioritizes more. I'm not teaching that lesson." I could hear Linda's discomfort. She wanted me to be flexible and accommodating so that the family drama would resolve and everyone could move forward without tension. She didn't understand that some dynamics can only be broken by refusing to participate in them. The next meaningful contact came from my father. On May 30th, he texted me, "Your mother is having health issues related to stress. I need you to consider the consequences of your actions." This was a new weapon. Not just emotional blackmail, but medical blackmail. A suggestion that my refusal to reschedule my wedding was literally making my mother sick. I responded with documentation. I texted back, "Dad, I understand Mom is stressed, but I've done nothing wrong. I've planned my wedding according to a timeline that was established before Stephanie's engagement was even announced. If Mom's stress is related to my wedding date, that's about her expectations, not about my behavior. I'm not responsible for managing her emotions by sacrificing my own life decisions." He didn't respond. The week before my wedding, something shifted in the family narrative. My mother had apparently decided that if she couldn't control me through direct pressure, she could control me through isolation. She began calling my extended family and describing my behavior in increasingly dramatic terms. According to the stories that filtered back to me, I had deliberately chosen my wedding over family unity, rejected my parents, and disrespected my sister. One of my cousins, David, who works in corporate communications and understands narrative control, called me directly. "Your mother is rewriting the story," he said. "She's telling people you're the villain. She's taking full credit for you moving your wedding in the first place. She's suggesting you never planned on having your parents there. It's a textbook narrative reversal." I realized I needed to take control of my own story, not dramatically, not through confrontation, but through clarity. On June 5th, 2 weeks before the wedding, I sent a single email to my immediate family. I spent 6 hours writing it. Every sentence was precise, every claim was documented, every timeline was factual. I outlined the sequence of events, the date my wedding was established, the date my sister became engaged, the date my mother called to ask me to reschedule, the dates and content of subsequent pressure, the dates and content of escalating threats, the specific texts where my mother had suggested withdrawing financial support, the specific date my parents announced they wouldn't attend. I concluded with this: I love you all, but I will not accept a family dynamic where my major life events can be overturned whenever something more prestigious comes along. I will not accept financial manipulation as a tool for controlling my decisions. I will not accept being isolated by my family because I refuse to sacrifice my wedding for an engagement party. My wedding is June 15th. I hope you'll be there. But I will not reschedule to accommodate pressure that has no legitimate basis. I'm not angry, I'm just done negotiating with conditions I shouldn't have had to negotiate in the first place. I sent that email at 10:47 p.m. on June 5th. Within an hour, my phone started ringing. My Aunt Patricia called to say I'd been inappropriate and disrespectful. My brother called to say I should just call Mom. My mother eventually called, her voice sharp with fury. That email was completely uncalled for. I documented the truth. If you find it uncalled for, that says something about the truth, not about the email. You've humiliated me in front of the entire family. I've told the family what actually happened. If that feels like humiliation, you might consider why accuracy feels like attack. You don't get to use your fancy lawyer tactics on your own mother. That statement made me pause. What lawyer tactics? That email, that documentation, that was written by an attorney, wasn't it? No, Mom, that was written by me, a surgeon who learned early in her career how to document important information clearly. I've written patient reports and surgical outcomes documentation for 12 years. This is just the same skill applied to family communication. She hung up. My wedding day arrived on June 15th under clear blue skies and 72 degrees. Derek and I had decided not to have a formal processional or ceremony because we wanted something that felt like a celebration of our actual relationship rather than a performance of traditional expectations. We got married in our garden in Cambridge, surrounded by Derek's parents, my godmother, my brother Thomas, and 42 friends from across my life. No grandparents, no cousins, no extended family performance, just people who wanted to be there because they loved Derek and me. My mother did not attend. My father did not attend. Stephanie did not attend. But Dr. James Chen, my medical school roommate and now my closest friend, was there. My favorite colleague from St. Michael's was there. Derek's sister, who I genuinely loved, was there. My godmother, who had always been my quiet advocate, was there. The absence of my immediate family felt like a weight that I'd prepared myself to carry. So when the day arrived, I was able to set it down more easily than I'd feared. Derek and I exchanged vows that we'd written ourselves. My godmother gave a reading about choosing the people who choose you. We had dinner in the garden and danced under string lights until 1 a.m. The next morning, I received a call from my father. I was in our hotel room in Newport, still in my wedding clothes from the night before, my hair still styled. "Your mother is ready to apologize," he said. "That's good. She wants to have dinner with you and Derek. She wants to move past this." "I'm not interested in moving past it," I told him. "Moving past it means pretending it didn't happen. I'm interested in a relationship where this doesn't happen again. That's a different thing entirely." "What do you need from her?" I thought about that carefully. I need her to understand that my life decisions are mine to make. I need her to understand that social standing isn't more important than my well-being, and I need her to understand that I won't tolerate financial or emotional coercion as a tool for controlling my behavior. If she can understand those things, we can build a relationship moving forward. If she can't, then we need to maintain a boundary that protects me. There was a long silence. That's a difficult position. Yes, but it's the only position I have available to me that allows me to maintain my own integrity. My parents did eventually reach out. My mother sent a letter, an actual handwritten letter, 3 weeks after my wedding. She acknowledged that she'd overreacted and had been stressed about Stephanie's engagement. She asked if we could find a way to repair the relationship. She did not explicitly apologize for the financial threats, the pressure campaign, or the boycott. She did not acknowledge that her behavior had been manipulation, but she did acknowledge that something had happened that needed repair. I responded with a letter of my own. I said I was willing to rebuild the relationship, but that I needed consistency rather than apology. I needed her to demonstrate through future behavior that she understood my boundaries. I didn't demand immediate forgiveness. I simply established the terms under which a relationship could continue. My parents attended Derek's parents' anniversary party in September. We had a polite conversation. My mother asked about my upcoming surgical conference. My father asked about our home renovation plans. It was pleasant and somewhat superficial, which was appropriate for that stage of boundary restoration. Relationships that have experienced violation need time to rebuild trust, and that rebuilding happens through demonstration, not declaration. Stephanie's engagement party did eventually happen, rescheduled to early August. She invited me. I declined. She was trying to repair the relationship too, in her own way, but I didn't have the emotional capacity to celebrate an event that had been weaponized against me. That was a boundary I needed to maintain. 6 months later, in December, my mother called me about Christmas. We'd always done Christmas at their home, but I'd decided that this year, Derek and I would host Christmas at our own house. I expected resistance. Instead, my mother asked what we'd like her to contribute to dinner. "She's trying," Derek observed afterward. "I know," I said. And she was. Not perfectly. Not without moments of regression where she'd make a subtle comment about how much she'd given up to support my career, or how difficult she'd found my stubbornness. But the overtly manipulative behavior had stopped. The escalating pressure had stopped. And more importantly, I'd learned that I could survive my family's disapproval without requiring their approval to validate my decisions. That might not sound like a dramatic resolution. There was no legal battle. There was no inheritance dispute. There was no public exposure or consequence that felt proportional to the betrayal. My mother didn't lose her social standing. My father didn't face professional repercussions. My sister didn't experience humiliation. But I did experience something more valuable than those things. I experienced the clarity of understanding exactly who I was in relationship to my family. I learned that I could accept my family's love and still maintain my boundaries. I learned that other people's expectations don't have to determine the shape of my life. And I learned that sometimes the most powerful victory isn't in winning a battle with someone else, it's in refusing to fight using their weapons. If you've experienced family pressure, financial coercion, or manipulation around major life decisions, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. How did you maintain your boundaries? And please subscribe to see more stories about family betrayal, emotional justice, and the power of refusing to play by the rules that others created for you.